Consider the household of the Baron Featherington. 3 misses.
Okay. Corset myth. Bonanza here. Hi, my name's Kate Strasdin, author and dress historian, and I'm going to talk to you today about some period dramas and break down some of the accuracies or inaccuracies in some of these clips. This clip is from the personal history of David Copperfield, and we're going to look at the scene with the donkeys.
Hello? Can you wake up?
What are you doing?
Medicine. Reviving you.
So what I love about this particular adaptation of David Copperfield and what you see here is real saturation of colour. And there's no particular intention to be 100% accurate. This isn't necessarily about accuracy, it's about creating a kind of fantasy of early Victorian dress. And because it's intentional, it's really successful. You have Tilda Swinton in this brilliant kind of golden bronze dress, and there are details that are really accurate. So the kind of smocking on the sleeve, that was very much a period detail from that decade. Then you have different details that make it slightly, that just kind of bend it slightly and make it unexpected. But I think it works because it's intentional. So David Copperfield is representing the working class. He's wearing a knotted scarf and this plaid shirt, and working dress doesn't survive. So whereas designers often have access to surviving garments from the middle and upper classes, you don't get very much. So very often designers have to work from images and descriptions, but not objects themselves. He's wearing quite bright plaids. The costume designer actually looked at American daguerreotypes from the period where you have people wearing really bold patterns, and this was an inspiration for these. So it might look really bright, but I think it's a nod to these kind of emerging industries that were creating very bright colours.
His head is entirely removed from his body, we're sure.
The brilliant character of Mr. Dick here, who's wearing what might be described as a dressing gown, or earlier in the 18th century it was called a banyan. So it's a signal of being at home. It's informal and not wearing a jacket over the top. So it's not sort of pyjamas or anything like that, but it is a kind of informal at home in this very bright pattern. So again, a slight, just an edge of eccentricity.
Now, Mr. Dick, don't be a fool, because nobody can be more discerning than you when you choose. David Copperfield, my brother, you've heard me speak of him.
Yes, just then.
Also the quilting, so you can see the quilted collar of this robe, very much about being at home and comfortable and also warm. So lots of indoor garments at this time were quilted because, of course, there's no central heating. So the more warmth that you can actually keep next to your body, the better. But still in bright colours and clashing patterns. So he's got a patterned waistcoat and then an entirely different pattern with the dressing gown on the top. So this is meant to be, I think, quite chaotic in a way. It's meant to reflect the way that he thinks.
Janet! Yes? Round the bath! There you are.
I think in this case, Janet is probably someone who's worked for the family for a long time, and so maybe they're giving it some artistic licence. In families where they have lots of domestic servants, they would more likely be wearing a livery or a uniform, and they'd all be wearing the same thing. Whereas here you've got Janet, who is probably a maid of all work. She perhaps would have just worn a what was called a washing cotton. So it was like a cotton dress that is very serviceable. It could quite feasibly be that she's wearing something that doesn't look like a servant's uniform, but suits what she does in her life.
Yes, Mum. Mr. Dick cracks it every time.
Thing is, I haven't eaten in a very long
Oh, donkeys! Janet! Yes, Mum? There must be 50 of them. It's an infestation.
What I love in that scene as well is the movement. So you see both women there moving really freely in their garments, and I think that's a really important thing about costume designers who's designed so successfully, is that women could move in clothes, and so you see them running off and moving in what they're wearing, and so it's not about these sort of static women that couldn't move, and there they are running off. This is depicting the change of fortunes for David, wearing, again, bright absolutely clashing colours and patterns, and you'd think, well, that must be a fantasy. It is in part, but also when you look at surviving objects and swatches from that time, you do get these bright patterns. You do get, maybe not necessarily together, but certainly men's trousers could be really, really bold, and that's captured here. I love this because although it's a fantasy and you could argue that there are inaccuracies, but I think they're intentional, so it's a 9 out of 10 for me. This is Bridgerton and the Debutante.
Dearest reader, the time has come to place our bets for the upcoming social season. Consider the household of the Baron Featherington. 3 misses.
Okay, corset myth. Bonanza here. There are many things I love about the Bridgerton costumes, because again, Bridgerton is a fantasy. Bridgerton isn't supposed to be accurate. The myth of the corset and this idea of being winched into your corset, that it's going to cause injury and it's going to draw blood. First of all, here she's not wearing anything underneath her corset. That's completely inaccurate. You wore a shift or a chemise underneath your corset, which protected your skin from the corset, but also your corset from any body odour, and so you would never wear a corset without anything underneath. I've done a lot of research into women mountaineers from the 19th century, climbing mountains in their corsets and doing everything in their corsets because they're used to it. So I don't think I could necessarily go to a ball or climb a mountain in a corset, but if you've always done it all your life and it's normal, it's what you wear. I wonder if maybe people look at things like skinny jeans and say, why did people wear them?
Miss Daphne Bridgerton, presented by her mother, the Right Honourable, the Dowager Viscountess Bridgerton.
So here you've got very traditional court dress, and in this sense, the white, the gold, the Prince of Wales feathers, and then the long train. This is actually really following the kind of prescribed court wear for the period, and captures this kind of very odd formal occasion where you're presented to the monarch. You've got the juxtaposition of the Queen, who is very much living in the 18th century. So although we're at the beginning of the 19th century, the Queen is still wearing the clothes of her youth. So she's wearing a dress that would have been more suited to the 1770s, and it shows somebody who is perhaps not ready to let go of her past or is thinking about her youth. The panniers that stick out at the side were very much an 18th century fashion. It was to do with showing when cloth was really expensive, silk brocades, really expensive, and so it's almost like showing it on a canvas. So it was a way of showing off the cloth that you could afford. The size of the panniers really depended on the occasion. So the most formal court dress could be really extensive, then the smaller panniers were more kind of everyday, not quite so showy. It was definitely occasion driven. The bigger the pannier, the posher the occasion. Throughout Bridgerton, you have elements of it that's really accurate in terms of the silhouettes. It's more the fabrics and the trimmings that are often more contemporary, and they've used all sorts of neons and different colours. But the silhouettes are often really accurate. Not such bright colours at that time. So for Bridgerton, despite the kind of wild colour and intentional kind of madness, if you're going to talk about accuracy, I guess it has to be a 5. Sorry. So this clip is from the TV series Gentleman Jack, and it is the wedding. So of course, right from the outset, you see what is perhaps from behind a man and a woman going to church. Of course, what you have is Anne Lister, who is wearing, certainly from the waist up, essentially a man's wardrobe complete with top hat and cravat, alongside her partner Anne, who is wearing much more what might look like exaggerated silhouettes, but in fact is very accurate for the period, the sort of 1820s, 1830s, enormous sleeves, leg of mutton sleeves as they were called, very, very much all the rage at that time. Then you see that actually Anne Lister is still wearing a full-length skirt. There would have been no way that somebody in her position, even somebody with lots of money, wouldn't have worn trousers. So although she's wearing this very masculine wardrobe in terms of the jacket and the waistcoat and the headwear, she's still wearing, it could have been a riding habit skirt, so a tailored skirt, but it is a skirt, not any kind of trousers. What's really important at this time is headwear. You couldn't leave the house without wearing a hat. If you're a woman, you wear a different kind of bonnets that would be trimmed with ribbons. If you're a man, you're wearing a top hat, a cap if you're a working man. There's no way that to go outside with a bare head is unthinkable.
Cleanse the thoughts of our hearts by the inspiration of thy Holy Spirit.
So you can really see the full kind of puffiness of those sleeves. Women actually wore sleeve puffs underneath, so they're a bit like kind of armbands that you would tie to your arm underneath, and then the outer garment would take on the shape of the sleeve. So that's why they look as enormous as they do. I think if you look at fashion plates of the time, you think it can't have been that much of an exaggerated silhouette, but it definitely was.
Take and eat in remembrance that Christ died for thee, and feed on him in your hearts by faith with thanksgiving.
You can see that really lovely waistcoat there, and actually surviving men's waistcoats look exactly like that. This is a point where menswear is becoming more sober, so black, dark green, brown suits, but waistcoats retained some of the colour that men used to wear in the 18th century. So you have these very elaborate waistcoats. So that definitely ties in with kind of popular masculine trends at that time.
Christ died for thee.
So that's a great contrast between the two there. You've got on the one hand the really sort of hyper feminine silhouette with the huge shoulders, the pelerine, which is the kind of little cape on the outside, and the big sleeves and the pale colours. And then on the other side you've got Anne Lister in her very dark, sober wool with her cravat. And I suppose the top hat is almost like the most overtly masculine symbol that she could have worn, really. Women often wore coloured dresses to get married in. It was practical, so it meant if you had to manage your budget, you could then wear it for other occasions. Often it would become your kind of Sunday best dress or something that you would retain for special occasions. So yes, dresses, coloured wedding dresses were really popular, particularly if your budget meant that you couldn't just splash out on a white dress that you might not wear again. So Anne Lister, that obviously her diaries account for a great deal of her life, and there's a lot of detail, and there are people that have looked at the accounts. She wrote a lot about what she wore, about where she was buying things from and the suppliers that she actually patronised for in terms of her dress. How much it would have been as overtly masculine as that is difficult to tell. So for an accuracy rating for Gentleman Jack, Tom Pye did an amazing job on these costumes and the distinctiveness of their roles and showing off that really exaggerated period. I think it's a 9 out of 10 from me. We're going to look at Little Women and Beth's Last Christmas.
Mommy?
Okay, so I think the first thing that you notice when you look at this clip is that it's Jo March and she has short hair, and that's really unusual to see that at this time, and it's a sign of the costume designer's ambition to make her appear to be really unconventional and unusual for the time period.
Mommy? Mommy?
What you also have is Marmee, who is a beloved character in American literature. The way that Jacqueline Duran costumed her here was this very unstructured kind of costume. So it's something that is meant to show that she herself is also a bit different, a bit outside of the kind of middle class conventional woman that you might expect. So she's wearing quite a loose gown and her hair is down. She's at home, but it's a picture of kind of domesticity, but perhaps a family that are just slightly on the boundaries of convention.
Popcorn, have to make sure that it's in the middle. You're doing the sides first.
Right, this is a scene, it's so bound up in nostalgia. There's lots of plaid, so fabrics, check fabrics, knitted fabrics. It's all kind of warm and nostalgic. Queen Victoria was really keen on tartan and it became part of a kind of notion of Christmas being this very traditional, homely kind of time. But in the US, it has It does have associations with people who are looking at their Celtic roots, and so you have people that are really interested in their clan tartans, and then the plaids are also made in the States and become a big part of that kind of textile traditions of the country.
The sides are the most important bit. If you don't have the sides, then the middle is the most important.
Here's another Christmas gift for the Marsh family.
Oh my God!
So obviously here as well, you've got the uniforms placing it in the period of the American Civil War, but it is these really kind of soft fabrics. Jacqueline Duran was very keen that she wanted the characters to each have their individual palette, so you kind of see that playing out here, and against the backdrop of this really kind of homely Christmas.
Oh, Beth. Merry Christmas, my dear. Merry Christmas to each of you.
Also, this is about a family that don't have necessarily a lot of money. So things like the crossover knitwear, the idea that perhaps they're making things by hand, perhaps hand-me-downs, passing on. It's not meant to look too polished. So it's very talking about kind of economic status as well. This is, obviously, it's the tragic, it's after Beth has died. In some ways, Jo is the kind of man of the house. She's having to take on the role of person in control of her feelings and looking after everybody else in a way. So I think the costuming really did that successfully. When you look at Jo here, so time has passed and her hair has grown longer, and that also is kind of a marker of maybe her growing up a little bit. But also you have this hint towards her very more boyish wardrobe. So she's wearing almost like a man's denim-y shirt. She's wearing a knitted waistcoat that's meant to kind of talk to those masculinities that she was really depicted in throughout this film. And as somebody that really didn't identify herself as being within the boundaries of sort of conventional femininity, and this kind of outfit really explores that here. So I think Little Women is a good 8 out of 10 for accuracy. There's so much detail there, and the characters that are developed through the costumes, so yeah, they're great. I think for me the biggest mistake is always going to be this idea of the corset as this instrument of torture. The corset was just an everyday object for women. It wasn't as problematic as we think it might be now. Just because we don't wear it now and it's unfamiliar, it has become this object that seems to stand up for all the oppression that women have undoubtedly been subjected to over the centuries, but it's become the point, that it's become the object that has sort of encapsulates that, I think probably misguidedly. Thank you for watching. Don't forget you can get my hardback, The Dress Diary of Mrs Anne Sykes, by clicking at the link below, and also subscribe to Penguin for more videos just like this.